Welcome to a special edition of Hannity and Colmes. I'm Alan Colmes. We're coming to you live from Washington University in St. Louis, where George W. Bush and John Kerry faced off in their second presidential debate. Coming up tonight, we'll have DNC Chairman Terry McAuliffe, New York Governor George Pataki, Pennsylvania Governor Ed Rendell, Bush Senior Advisor Karl Rove, and former Senator Bob Kerry. They will all join us, but first, Bush Campaign Senior Advisor Karen Hughes joins us. I know what you're going to say. I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, I've got that deja vu feeling.
That's right, exactly.
You're going to say that Bush did.
I didn't mean to. Let us talk.
You've got an entourage with you.
I don't think I did. I think we're following Sean.
You know, honestly, clearly the president would have had to do better tonight than he did last Thursday. They couldn't.
Well, Alan, I think the president built on his performance from last Thursday, but he clearly dominated tonight, and I think, frankly, he talked about his plans for the future, to create jobs and to make the country more safe. I think Senator Kerry looked pretty testy and kind of defensive.
I'm sure you feel that way.
He finally had to account for that 20-year voting record
But you
tonight.
say plans to create jobs. The job numbers out today were not good. 96,000 jobs. Need 150,000
well, there you go again, seeing
even.
the sun going down and not realizing it's coming up tomorrow morning.
But you say coming up. Where's the improvement?
1.9 million jobs, Alan, since in 13 months. That's a lot of new jobs.
Karen,
that is significant improvement.
The numbers that came out today were below expectations,
well,
correct?
Isn't that interesting, this expectations game? We created new jobs. They went back and revised the last two quarters upward, showing that we created more jobs the last two quarters than they originally had reported.
You need 150,000 to break even, right?
We're back to growth. But the real question in this election, Alan, is who has the plan going forward to create jobs?
But he's got to exist on his record. The president can't just look forward. He's got to answer for his record over the last 4 years.
I think gave a vigorous accounting for that tonight, including the fact that he took us from one of the worst situations, a very dangerous time for our economy when he took office and the stock market was declining and we were sinking into recession. Then we had the attacks of September 11th, which cost us 1 million jobs in the 3 months right after those attacks.
The promises he made after September 11th, though, were millions of jobs which have not come to fruition. And this was a promise he made after September 11th.
And the policies that he enacted after September 11th are what led this to become one of the shortest recessions in history, led us back to growth, and we have to continue that growth. Senator Kerry's policies of increasing taxes, he looked in the camera tonight in one of those very low credibility moments that I think he resulted in him shattering his credibility, and he said, I won't raise your taxes. And then he proceeded to outline all these promises for which he cannot pay. So we can't have it both ways.
He was very clear about that he would raise taxes on the top 2% and the other 98%, and he would not be touched. He was very clear about that, just as Bill Clinton did very similarly in the last presidency, which was very successful economically.
And he was also very wrong about that. He may have been clear, but he was clearly wrong because he said that raising taxes on the top 2% will raise anywhere between $600 billion and $800 billion, depending on whose numbers you believe. His health care plan alone that he touted tonight so glowingly would cost more than $1 trillion.
Wait a minute.
And so there's a
but
gap.
the president wants to privatize Social Security. That would cost, by many estimates, $2 trillion.
Alan, don't try that old scare tactic.
That's not an old scare tactic. You want to talk about scare tactics? That's what you guys do.
The president wants to do is let younger workers set aside part of their money in an account.
What's it going to cost to privatize Social Security?
What's it going to cost to do nothing?
What's it going to cost to privatize? Social Security, as of now, seems to be solvent. But you're talking about privatizing it for $2 trillion.
The projections are all that it's going to go broke. You're going to have a massive tax increase or a huge benefit. Huge benefit cut in the future if you don't do something. And President Bush recognizes that and knows for younger workers, not for senior citizens. Senior citizens Social Security is going to stay exactly the same. For old guys like you and me, it's going to stay exactly the same. But younger workers ought to be able to put a piece of their payroll tax into an account.
Karen, tonight was a very strong night for the president. One of the things I liked is he highlighted John Kerry's record, 20 years, no discernible accomplishments, $2.2 trillion proposed in new spending. The only way he can pay for it is what he has done in the past. 98 times he has raised taxes on the American people. The president gave a tax cut to everybody. Of course,
200 times voted to break budget caps that he now claims he's for. I mean, it's just you have to look at the senator's record and say that his promise tonight when he looked in the camera and said he won't raise taxes just has no credibility. I think the senator shattered his credibility.
I think a defining moment tonight, though, is John Kerry could not shake the liberal tag that the president stamped on his forehead.
And boy, he didn't look happy happy about it, did he?
Well, were you stunned at his response about that? And he was so defensive. He seemed to lose energy as the night went on because of that.
I think he came across as sort of petty and lecturing a little bit, and also very, he was on the defensive clearly tonight and didn't like it. But I think there are three things that are really important, Sean, that Senator Kerry did tonight that I think really cost him credibility. First, he said he has never changed positions on Iraq. Now, everybody in America...
Can I expect some good ads about this?
Everybody in America knows that's not true. I mean, when the president made the decision to go into Iraq in the spring of 2003, Senator Kerry said it was the right decision.
Right.
Now he says it was the wrong war. So that's...
Karen, it's more than that. He said Iraq's WMDs pose a real and grave threat to America. He said leaving Saddam unfettered with nuclear weapons and WMDs was unacceptable. To now develop into this new position and then to say he's never changed position, he doesn't have credibility. But what an opportunity for your campaign.
Well, and another, I think there are a couple of opportunities from tonight's debate where he really hurt his credibility. Second, he said that the government has nothing to do with his health care plan. Now, that is laughable. 8 out of 10 of the new people that he would sign up for insurance on his government health care plan would be signed up on a government program. 8 million Americans. The analysts have looked at it and said that 8 million Americans would be moved from private health employer insurance onto government programs. Yet he says the government has nothing to do with it. I mean, it has no credibility.
What I was really happy about, besides the president obviously being, very well prepared for tonight's debate, very conversational, very competent, he gained strength every minute as the debate went on. But what made me feel good is finally tonight, only 25 days out of an election, John Kerry's record came to the forefront. His $7 billion in proposed tax cuts for the intelligence community, and the president looked him in the eye and he said, that's not credible based on your record and on your past.
Exactly. He can't stand here and say he's going to defend America when he has a 20-year record of voting against the defense systems we're using to defend America, when he has that record of voting to gut our intelligence services. And so I think the president did a great job tonight in pointing that out and holding him to account for his record as well as for his promises. I mean, the third area where I think he really hurt his credibility tonight is he looked in the camera and said he's not going to raise taxes. He can't pay for that. He can't afford the promises he's making in other areas like health care without raising taxes.
Well, especially when you're talking about the number of dollars we're talking about, which is proposed spending of $2.2 billion. What was the difference tonight in your opinion? I mean, there seems to be...
I think it was people. The president is a people person. He reacts to people. I was watching back on the TV screen and I saw him smiling at people in the audience. I caught him winking once at someone.
A couple of times.
He's a people person, and he really reacts to people, and is a wonderful, just enjoys people. And so I think he really enjoyed the format tonight.
Are we going to take some of Kerry's record when he declared tonight as definitively he's never changed positions? I can think of the greatest campaign ads in the history of elections.
Well, I'm writing. I'll be glad to take notes.
That'd be pretty good.
I'm sure that our media people will take a look at those statements and be looking at that. But I think also the American people themselves were able to look at that and to look at the two candidates tonight, to consider their records, look at President Bush's record in office, a record that has resulted in our country being safer, that has brought us back from dangerous times for both our economy and for our national security.
The president was outstanding.
And the president, I think, did a great job of talking about
where he's led the
country.
Hey, thank you.
Maybe we'll do this again in Tempe, Arizona.
I imagine we will.
Thank you very much. Coming up next, we're going to talk to DNC Chairman Terry McAuliffe, and New York Governor George Pataki will be here. Later, Pennsylvania Governor Ed Rendell joins the debate, and Bush Senior Advisor Karl Rove and former Senator Bob Kerry. That's all coming up on this very special edition of Hannity and Colmes.
Now, I can see why people think that he changes position quite often, because he does. For a while, he was a strong supporter of getting rid of Saddam Hussein. He saw the wisdom until the Democrat primary came along. And Howard Dean, the anti-war candidate, began to gain on him. And he changed positions.
As we continue, welcome back to the special edition of Hannity and Colmes. I'm Sean Hannity, coming to you live from Washington University in St. Louis, the site of the second presidential debate. Coming up, New York Governor George Pataki will join us, and later Pennsylvania Governor, our old friend Ed Rendell. First, we're joined by DNC Chairman. I'm very sorry, Terry, the president wiped the floor with John Kerry tonight, so you're having a tough night.
Knockout tonight for John Kerry. 3 bouts, we've won the first 2.
No. All right, so you're admitting defeat?
We won the first two.
All right, how does a guy, explain this to me, how does a guy say, I've never changed my opinion? He said that Iraq's weapons of mass destruction pose a real and grave threat to America. Leaving Saddam unfettered with nuclear weapons, or WMDs, is totally unacceptable. And then say it was the right decision to disarm him, and now say wrong war, wrong place, wrong time. How do you justify that inconsistency?
Let's make it clear, Sean.
I would love, for the first time, I'd
Let's make it very clear. First, John Kerry said Saddam Hussein was a bad man. The way in which George Bush went to get him was wrong. We now know they had no weapons of mass destruction. The president has a lot more intelligence than a senator does, as you know it. We went in there based upon faulty information. I mean, you look at that debate tonight. It was a knockout for John Kerry.
You're dreaming.
George Bush did not look presidential. At one point, when he charged Charlie Gibson, interrupted him, stopped him, he raised his voice, he got angry with the questioners. That turned off undecided voters in this country. He did not look like a president of the United States of America.
What happened tonight for the first time is your candidate was exposed for who he is. He is the most liberal senator in Washington. He voted to raise taxes on the American people, as the president pointed out, 98 times. And he says he's going to reform intelligence, and yet the Kerry Amendment would have cut intelligence by $7 billion. And it seemed that he had the wind knocked out of him in the first round by the president.
You and I didn't see the same debate, I'll say that, Sean. What it exposed tonight again was George Bush, President of the United States of America, had trouble putting sentences together, could not defend his policy in Iraq, couldn't answer the questions as it relates to job growth and deficit. It was a very bad night. It was a big win.
How do you explain this guy's, the only one thing I've ever seen John Kerry consistent on in his whole career is raising taxes. How do you justify raising taxes on the American people 98 times and say that that's good for the economy?
John Kerry will reduce taxes for 98% of the taxpayers. George Bush has given one for you and me and Alan, but he ain't doing anything for people out there.
Terry, you know, it's funny. They come up with these numbers and they keep repeating them. The fact of the matter is, if you look at the congressional record, John Kerry voted to lower taxes 640 times. So they threw out these numbers 98 times. They said 250 a while back. The Republicans put out, and it turns out that many of those times were just to keep taxes as they were, and there were multiple votes on some of the same bills. And they keep adding them up, and it's just not an accurate number. Actually, John Kerry voted to lower taxes, given the number 640 times.
And he broke with our party to have a balanced budget amendment. Right. The bottom line, people know the economy isn't working. George Bush, the first president in 72 years not to create a single net new job. He is the highest deficit president we've ever had, $422 billion. Right. We got a mess in Iraq. We spent $200 billion. It hasn't worked for George Bush.
People throw out numbers at debates, and they believed or not believed, then truth squads come out. But you mentioned a key moment tonight, because so much of this is not just substance, but form. And you saw a moment when George W. Bush lost his temper.
He lost control.
Lost
he did not look like a president. He went out of control. He called Senator Kerry Senator Kennedy. He referred to the internets. They're not. It's internet. I mean, it was one mistake.
He got mad at the moderator.
He got mad at the questioners. These people are undecided voters. They want to ask questions. What happened to my job? Why is my health care gone up 50%? What's happened to the education funding? George Bush didn't have answers.
He's also
a huge win for John Kerry.
They're in denial about the Doppler report that came out just a couple of days ago, which very clearly states that the justifications this administration gave to go to war are not true. And then it goes what David Case said, what many other reports have said, what the 9/11 Commission that the president didn't want and then flip-flopped and did want says. They don't want to admit what these reports actually say. Nonpartisans who investigate what's going on in Iraq.
The report came out, George Bush said in June, let's wait for the Doppler report to come out. It came out, no weapons of mass destruction, nor did they have any plans to have weapons of mass destruction. We went into Iraq based on false pretenses. John Kerry's commander-in-chief will always tell the truth. He will get our troops out much quicker than George Bush. No one believes George Bush anymore. He's made a mockery of the foreign policy.
My concern is that these debates, numbers are thrown out, numbers of tax increases, certain other facts and figures, and the public has to understand that there is more than one side to some of these stories, and that not everything is a fact that it gets stated in fact at these particular debates.
Let the numbers speak for themselves. First president in 72 years not to create a single net new job.
Right.
And the jobs, Alan, that he has created, on average, pay less than $15.40 an hour. They don't come with any health benefits at all.
Right.
Underfunded education by $30 billion. Let's let the numbers speak for themselves.
Just today, job figures are out, 96,000 jobs. They need 150,000 jobs a month just in order to maintain, to stay even, and that's not happening. This is a guy who promised, not before, but after September 11th, the number of millions and millions of jobs which have not come to fruition.
February 2002, he said he'd create 6 million new jobs. After 9/11, after the recession, and you know what? He was wrong. He has 7 million jobs under what he said would be. And tonight, he did not look like a president of the United States. John Kerry Kerry. Strong answer, strong command.
Kerry, I'll get you passes to the president's second inauguration. The president wiped the floor tonight, and he was reelected this night. And you will see that I am right. You will see that I am right.
The more people last week, but George Bush even shocked me.
The more people see of Kerry, the less we like him. Then he was
actually, his likability numbers are up, by the way.
Sean, George Bush was embarrassing the first debate, horrifying the second debate. We got one to go. I don't know what. He shouldn't even show up next week.
All right. New York Governor George Pataki will join us next. That's all coming up right here in Spin Alley. And later we're going to get Governor Ed Rendell's thoughts on the debate tonight. Plus, Karl Rove is going to stop by and see us all straight ahead on this busy night. Glad you're with us.
The world is more dangerous today because the president didn't make the right judgments. Now, the president wishes that I had changed my mind. He wants you to believe that, because he can't come here and tell you that he's created new jobs for America. He's lost jobs. He can't come here and tell you that he's created health care for Americans.
Welcome back to a special post-debate edition of Hannity and Colmes. I'm Alan Colmes, coming to you live from Spin Alley at Washington University in St. Louis. Coming up, Governor Ed Rendell and Karl Rove. First, we're joined by the governor of my home state, the great state of New York, George Pataki. Governor, you are our first guest on Hannity and Colmes. We started 8 years ago.
A long time ago.
So it's good to see you once again.
I do remember. Congratulations. Obviously, the show is
it's because of our first guest that we're still on the air. Listen, I really think that a lot of untruths get said at these debates. I don't believe that. I don't think that Kerry voted. He did not vote to raise taxes. You know that votes are taken out of context. He also voted to lower taxes a number of times. Job figures out today, not good for the president. Yet everything is spun. What is the public to believe?
I don't think it is a spin at all. I think the senator has done a great job of trying to hide his record of 20 years in the Senate throughout this campaign. And the president tonight appropriately pointed out that he doesn't show up much, but when he does, he consistently votes for higher taxes, to weaken our military, to slash our intelligence. And I think the president was the commander-in-chief tonight, did a great job, and I'm very pleased.
In the last 8 years, he voted $250 billion to increase intelligence. They keep saying that he's voted to decrease intelligence. You know there are many votes in any given issue, not just one vote.
Well, I'm not surprised, Alan, I'm not surprised he voted on both sides. Because that's what the
all senators do. When they add things to bills, you know that sometimes you'll vote for a bill, or there'll be omnibus bills, and sometimes they change the bill, then you vote the other way. Both sides do that.
Both sides might do that, but none with the consistent inconsistency of John Kerry. That's why he has one of the worst voting records in America. Of all 100 members
depending upon which side you're on. You know, I thought it was very clear tonight that he voted, and he's consistently said he wanted to give the president the authority to go to war if necessary, but it was very clear that only under certain circumstances would he then go and start that war. That President Bush said this is about keeping the peace, not starting a war, and he violated that pledge to the Senate.
Senator Kerry said he'd only do it under certain circumstances, meaning a global test. He had a chance tonight. But he had a chance tonight to explain what he meant when the president said, rightfully, you know, what is this global test you're talking about before we can defend America? Senator Kerry ducked it. So I think he was consistent in one thing, and that is he came down on both sides of the Patriot Act in the same debate.
But he's answered that question a number of times since the last debate. What he said is he would talk to the American people, get people on our side, and he would also inform our allies what's going on. But he's also been very clear when he said he would never consult or defer to other countries before defending the United States of America.
So long as we meet a global test. But this president has done what Senator Kerry is talking about doing, and that is bring a coalition of 30 countries from around the globe together. And a lot of the countries who might not be supporting us, we're now seeing the Food for Oil program was a scam that many, many countries benefited from, and they were happy to have Saddam there.
Hey, Governor, what I liked the most about tonight's debate, besides the president really strongly and very passionately articulating his position about why it was necessary in the overall scheme of the global war on terror to go into Iraq and defend this country and defend our homeland. Finally, for the first time, Senator Kerry's record became an issue in this campaign tonight. The fact that he cut intelligence $7 billion after the first Trade Center attack that you were very well aware of. The fact that he did raise taxes 98 times. The fact that he is proposing spending to the point of $2.2 trillion. And it seemed to take the air out of Kerry's, sails when the president just very matter-of-factly described his record.
I think the president was very effective in doing that, and it did put Senator Kerry on the defensive.
Yeah.
You know, the easiest thing in the world is to be a critic, to go out there and say, you could have done this better or that better. But the the senator is very reluctant to have his own record analyzed, and the president pointed out those votes to increase taxes, to slash intelligence, to vote against our military. I think he did an excellent job of dominating the debate. He was the commander-in-chief tonight.
But he just weaved it in ever so carefully and really didn't just focus on his record. I would have been far more aggressive, but his was far more effective, I think, in doing it that way. Hey, that's the senator's record. This is my record. This is my vision. And it's now becoming almost laughable when Senator Kerry suggests that he didn't change his position. We have the tapes. The commercials are out there. He's beginning to look foolish by defending that.
He certainly should be looking foolish. And tonight, they asked him about the Patriot Act. He looked the camera in the eye and said, I am for the Patriot Act. And then a questioner said, well, the Patriot Act is taking away our freedoms. And he goes, you're right. We have this problem with the Patriot Act, that problem with the Patriot Act. In one debate, he took the opposite side of an important issue.
I think what's becoming very clear here, and I like this, and I think this is a good choice for the American people, somebody that didn't waver from the day that he stood on that pile of rubble and told this country that we're going to go out and defend our homeland, and somebody who has shifted and changed with the political winds of the day. And I think that is becoming more and more clear every time they debate, and the president was very effective tonight.
The president was very effective. He is a principled leader, and he doesn't have to take a poll. He just tells the American people what he believes he is doing to protect us and to move us forward. And I think he did a very solid job, hit a home run, and it's great to see the president do this well.
It was great arguing with you 8 years ago, and it was fun arguing with you again tonight.
Alan, always good being out with you.
It's really 8 years
Governor
this
of the
week.
great state of New York, George Pataki. And coming up next, Governor Ed Rendell of Pennsylvania, and later, Presidential Advisor Karl Rove. Don't go away. A lot still to come on this special edition of Hannity and Colmes.
Welcome back to Hannity and Colmes. I'm Sean Hannity. We're coming to you live tonight from Washington University here in St. Louis, where George W. Bush and John Kerry had their second presidential debate. And coming up next, we'll be joined by senior political advisor for the president, Karl Rove, is going to join us. And later, former Senator Bob Kerry will join the post-debate analysis. But first, joining us from Pennsylvania, that all-important swing state, is Governor Ed Rendell, a Democrat and an old friend. How are you, Governor? Good to see you.
Hi, Sean. How are you?
There's one thing I like that the president did tonight, and I know you're a big Kerry supporter, but tonight John Kerry's record came into the forefront. His consistent vote to increase taxes, the #1 liberal in the United States Senate, the fact that after the first World Trade Center bombing, not only did he not show up for intelligence meetings, he wanted to cut the intelligence budget by $7 billion. Finally, his record is coming into the forefront. He's weak on defense, and he's weak on taxes, and he's big on spending. Will he be able to overcome that?
Well, first of all, Sean, I think your assumptions are all wrong. Number one, he was one of the first Democrats to vote for a balanced budget. And remember, it's the Democrats who eliminated the deficit. George Bush and his crew has produced the biggest deficit in the nation's history. Number two, John Kerry supported welfare reform, supported 100,000 more cops for America's streets. John Kerry has a record of strong leadership, of fiscal responsibility, and people aren't going to get fooled by labels anymore. You know, Republicans try to throw out labels. Americans listen. They listened in the first debate.
Right, but let me
John Kerry moved up 8 or 9 points. They listened in this debate, and I think they saw a strong leader.
The president won this debate tonight, Governor. Whether you're going to agree or not, that's fine. But the president won the debate tonight.
According to the flash polls, that's not correct.
Well, the flash polls that Terry McAuliffe tells people to go vote on, I don't believe them. But here's the point.
No, these are flash polls taken by the networks.
The president got us out of the recession he inherited. The negative impact.
No, he did.
Yes, he did. We've had the greatest.
Let's talk about Pennsylvania.
Governor, the last year is the greatest rate of growth in 20 years. 2 million jobs created in a year. And how is Senator Kerry going to overcome the fact that he is the #1 rated liberal in the United States Senate? How does he overcome that track record?
Well, let's look at the Bush economic record, because, Sean, you have just told the American people a pack of bull. First American president since Herbert Hoover to lose jobs, a net loss of 1.6 million jobs.
Yeah,
the jobs we created.
Herbert Hoover never had
to live under Sean. You got to let me finish.
Herbert Hoover didn't suffer after 9/11 either, the worst attack in American history. And we lost 1 million jobs that month.
Sean, you've got to let me finish.
Go ahead.
Secondly, 7 million jobs less created by the Bush administration, less than they predicted. Third, jobs that they did create, $9,000 less in salaries than the jobs we've been losing. Fourth, hundreds of thousands of manufacturing jobs lost. In Pennsylvania alone, 152,000 good-paying manufacturing jobs replaced in part, not all, by lower-paying jobs, and the average American family's income is down by $1,500.
Governor, it's Alan
Well, the
Colmes.
cost for everything has gone up.
Hey, it's Alan. Good to have you back on the program.
Hi, Alan. How are you?
You know, they keep repeating these numbers. Once again, look, if you want to count every single vote, he voted to lower taxes hundreds of times. He voted $250 billion in the last 8 years on intelligence spending. They keep wanting to tell you about him, and they use the L word as if being a liberal is a bad thing. I don't think it is to begin with, but I think the idea of...
But again, Sean, let's ask the American people, is it liberal to vote for a balanced budget? I'm sorry, Alan, is it liberal to vote for a balanced budget? And at the same time, is it conservative to run up the biggest deficits in history? Is it liberal to put 100,000 cops on the street? Is it conservative to vote to eliminate that cops program? So those are the things you have to ask. Those labels don't mean anything anymore.
They start saying
right now, the Democrats are the party of fiscal stability.
When they say liberal, 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 which is a game that's been played for years, we're not talking about his record anymore. They try to act like it's name-calling, but it's a good name. I like the L word. But if you look at his record, the things he has voted for, and he pointed out tonight, 1987, he helped fix Medicare, put 100,000 cops on the street. He's got a good record. If they keep repeating it often enough, perhaps, but it's not working. He's also been consistent on Iraq. I feel that he has clearly laid out that he was for taking out Saddam Hussein if done under the proper circumstances in the right time, but this president didn't do what he said he would do about that.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I think President Bush did better this time than he did in the last debate. No question about it. But he still was angry, he still was inflexible, and he was wrong on so many issues. And if you're an American, you look at this debate and say, that guy is never going to change. He's never going to adapt. He's never going to change his policies to react to new circumstances. John Kerry, for the second time in a row, showed himself to be strong, smart, and full of a lot of good ideas.
All right, Ed,
I think he did a great job.
Obviously, you guys are very sensitive. You've been exposed tonight as the #1 liberal in the Senate, the #1 tax increaser.
Not at all.
Defense and intelligence. I understand.
Sean,
you
who
lost
raised the
debate tonight.
deficit?
You're upset. But anyway,
Who raised the deficit?
Good to see you, my friend.
Sean.
All right, thank you. So who do you think was the winner tonight? You can log on to foxnews.com and check out their instant poll. And you can also see video of the debate. And you can read the transcript. Now, also you want to make sure on the record's coming up right after Hannity and Colmes. Greta is standing right there in the wings. She'll be joining you in a few minutes. Presidential advisor Karl Rove is going to join us next. And then later, former Nebraska Senator Bob Kerry's here straight ahead.
When he talks about being fiscally conservative, it's just not credible. If you look at his record in the Senate, he voted to break the spending caps, over 200 times. And here he says he's going to be a fiscal conservative all of a sudden. It's just not credible. You cannot believe it. And of course he's going to raise your taxes.
And welcome back to a special edition of Hannity and Colmes. I'm Alan Colmes, live from Washington University in St. Louis, the site of the second presidential debate. Still to come, former Nebraska Senator Bob Kerry. He'll join us. First joining us now is senior advisor to the president, Karl Rove. Karl, thank you so much.
Alan, great to be here
tonight. What advice did you give the president between the last debate and this debate?
None worth repeating, Alan.
It's all secret, classified information, is that?
Well, look, he's a very competitive guy, and he was intent upon doing a great job tonight, and I thought he did.
But was there some talk about how to perform differently than he did last time?
Look, I thought he did good last time. I thought he did great tonight.
Well, really, you know, look, a lot of people thought he didn't do as well last time, but there was a moment tonight where he kind of got angry at Charlie Gibson, it seemed. And, I mean, it seemed like it gets under his skin. You didn't see that.
No, I think you're misreading. I think he had a lot of fun tonight with it.
Did you really?
Flashes of humor.
You didn't see a flash of anger there at any time?
No. And believe me, I know anger.
You do? Well, you're never an angry guy, are you?
No, but I'm on the receiving end of it.
Is that right?
I'm prone to make a few mistakes.
People say a lot of things about it. Does it get to you? Does it personally bother you that people will bring you up? And as you just say, you've been the object of people's anger.
No, there's nothing I can do about it. So you worry about the things you can do something about.
If I'm a convenient punching boy, so be it.
The president today talked about sanctions working, or the sanctions did not work in Iraq. Colin Powell himself said back in 2001 that Saddam had not developed any significant capability with respect to weapons of mass destruction. He's unable to get conventional power against his neighbors, and the sanctions were working. Colin Powell said that.
Well, we know now through the in the aftermath of the fall of Saddam Hussein regime, we're beginning to understand how the sanctions were not working. We literally, the Doeffler report pointed out that literally he was taking as much as $350 million a year out of the oil for food program and using that money to keep intact all the weapons scientists and engineers and technicians in the dual-use facilities so they could restart these programs when the sanctions were fully undermined. And they were being undermined.
The rationale for war was not that he might one day restart programs or that he had the intent or desire. We were told he had.
And that's what the world community, thought. The world's unified belief of all of the intelligence services in the world was that he had these weapons. And why not? Because remember, all he had to do to get rid of the sanctions was to say, I've given up these weapons, I've destroyed my stockpiles, and I'll never do it again. And clearly, by subjecting himself to these onerous sanctions for the better part of a decade, he was maintaining this interest.
But here's the deal.
Let me make one more point. 2 years ago tomorrow, John Kerry stood up on the floor of the United States Senate and as a former member of the Intelligence Committee said, Saddam Hussein has nuclear weapons, Saddam Hussein has chemical weapons, Saddam Hussein has biological weapons, he has links to terrorists, he could give these bad things to those terrorists and we could suffer, we need to remove them from power.
The Doeffler report said, though, if we had just waited a little longer, let the sanctions continue.
No, it didn't say that at all.
And if we let the inspections continue,
Doeffler did not say that at all. His 1,500-page report says nothing to that at all.
We might very easily have not had the need to go to war based on that.
The report did not say that. You're absolutely right. Something happened here, though, tonight, and that is that John Kerry's 20-year record, I think really for the first time in this campaign, came front and center.
You bet.
Why was it missing up to this point?
Well, look, as the president said, the president's been talking about his agenda, and there have been some issues on the stage, but as the president said tonight, Senator Kerry he can hide, but he can't run from his record. And he's got a record in 20 years in the United States Senate of voting consistently to cut defense, raise taxes, expand government. And, you know what, tonight I found out it was extraordinary. He said, I'm for tort reform. There's not been a single tort reform bill, legal reform bill in the United States Senate that I think he's voted for. In fact, he's voted 10 times against the medical liability reform that was
neither John Kerry nor John Edwards really have an impressive Senate record or major legislation with their name, and in the case of Kerry, it's 20 years. But something else happened here. When John Kerry repeatedly says, I've never changed my mind. But you're a political operative. You've got to be thinking, wow, I can put that in with this, and this. And
well, and look, particularly when tonight he started off by saying, I've only had one position on Iraq. Even Allen would have to admit he's had about a dozen over the course of the last. I mean, for the war, against the war. He said on CBS
anti-war
News,
candidate.
Yeah, I'm anti-war candidate. I'm, you know, the war was brilliant. I supported the president. I mean, it was astonishing.
I'm sensing a political ad is gaining birth right here.
Right here, right in front of you.
Right here and now. But it's important. And the other thing, you know, I'm going to ask Bob Kerry about this in a few minutes. I looked at Bob Kerry's attendance record when he was on the Intelligence Committee, and Bob Kerry, after the first Trade Center attack, showed up often, about 90% of the time. John Kerry didn't show up for a year. What credibility can he have when he says he wants to reform?
Well, you know, that's bad, but what's worse is in the immediate aftermath of the first attack on the World Trade Center in 1993, he stood up and twice tried to slash the defense, the budgets of our intelligence services. He was attacked in doing so by Senator D. Cassini, a Democrat from Arizona, and Senator Inouye from Hawaii. Right. He couldn't even get Ted Kennedy's vote. It was such a radical proposal. I don't know if you've read his book, The New War, which is supposedly, which he wrote as a member of the Intelligence Committee. He said the number one threat we faced was the Italian Mafia, and the number two threat we faced was the Japanese Yakuza. And this is a guy who claims to have an understanding of what the war on terror is all about.
But is this the defining moment? Because you pointed out out some of the quotes John Kerry had only in 2003. We cannot leave Saddam unfettered with nuclear weapons or WMDs.
Tonight he said we should have left the sanctions in place. Do you remember what he said about sanctions? He said leaving the sanctions in place would be a disastrous policy. This guy is a political, he's suffering from political amnesia. He forgets all of these statements that he said before that contradict what he said.
Saddam, basically then what he's saying is, even though he said after we disarmed Saddam and captured Saddam that it was the right thing to do, and he bragged about voting for it.
Right.
But basically what he's saying tonight is that Saddam would still be in power.
Absolutely. In fact, if he had his way, remember, he voted against the first Gulf War. Yeah. So if he'd had his way, Saddam Hussein would not only be in power in Baghdad, he'd control the oil from Kuwait, he'd be threatening Saudi Arabia, and he'd be a much bigger danger to the world than he was for the decade of the 90s.
All right, now back onto the issue of spending. He's raised taxes 98 times in his career.
Voted for higher taxes, voted to raise taxes 98 times.
98 times.
He's actually voted, voted a number of times against tax cuts. And voted a number of times to take the smaller of a tax cut.
So you got a lot of momentum tonight.
A lot. It was fabulous. The president.
And he voted a number of times to lower taxes.
No, not in a significant way. You want to make the case that this guy's a consistent tax cutter?
Yes, you are.
Forget it, man.
You are such a good political operative. Would you take a place in the Kerry administration?
No way, because there ain't going to be one. I want to stay in the second administration.
Carl, thank you for being with us tonight.
Great to be with you, Alan. Great to be with you.
Former Nebraska Senator Bob Kerry, and Sean and I will give our own analysis of tonight's debate coming up on Hannity and Colmes.
Scare everybody here with throwing labels around. I mean, compassionate conservative, what does that mean? Cutting 500,000 kids from after-school programs, cutting 365,000 kids from health care, running up the biggest deficits in American history. Mr. President, you're batting 0 for 2.
And welcome back to the special edition of Hannity and Colmes. We're live from the second presidential debate tonight in St. Louis. I'm Sean Hannity. And joining us now is former Nebraska Senator Bob Kerry. Senator, good to see you. How are you?
I'm great.
You know, I went back, and one of the things I think changed tonight, or shifted tonight, is now John Kerry's liberal record is front and center. And I think he's going to have to defend this more, and the president began this tonight. I went back. You were on the Senate Intelligence Committee with Senator Kerry. After the first Trade Center attack, he didn't show up on those committee meetings for a full year, public meetings. For the years he was on, he missed 76%. Now, in contrast, I believe you attended 90% of all meetings. Should that be a valid issue that he didn't attend those meetings for 1 year?
No.
Not at all?
I mean, you're talking about the public meetings. The most important meetings are the ones that are not public.
But I've been given the records, and his attendance is even lower there.
I don't think that's right. I mean, I was the vice chairman for the committee, and I remember John participating a lot in the committee. So I mean, look, the intelligence, like a lot of the committees, oftentimes the membership will arrive when it's time to do the budget, when there's something enormously important. So it's not uncommon for people not to show up at every meeting. If you watch a hearing, for example, on C-SPAN, you'll see the chairman and the ranking member there, and the rest of the room is empty. So it's not uncommon.
I contend that he voted against major weapons systems that now comprise our military. But more importantly, back to intelligence, because this was an area of expertise. I got to be honest, I really respect your record on intelligence, and I think you have a strong position on it. And I think you were a little ahead of your time on seeing the threat, or the nature of the threat. But Senator Kerry, after the first Trade Center attack, came out with what was known as the Kerry Amendment that would have cut $7 billion. Dennis DeConcini said no way. Senator Inouye said no way. Ted Kennedy couldn't vote for it. Why shouldn't that be a bigger issue in the campaign?
Well, it can be a big issue if you want to examine the facts of what it was that he was trying to cut. I mean, the problem we were all having in the early 90s, I don't remember the amendment. I've gone back and looked at it. It's not that significant of an amendment.
It was $7 billion over a 5-year period.
But Porter Goss has supported, cuts about the same size. I mean, what had happened, Sean, is when the Soviet Union went away in 1991, the entire intelligence structure had been built up to confront the Soviet Union. And George Bush I began to implement, I think, a rational way to draw down our military and our intelligence, saying that we could get a peace dividend. In my view, that peace dividend produced an enormous stimulation to the economy, and I do not believe it caused a deterioration of the nation's capacity to defend itself.
When I look at his record and I look at the votes against, to cancel items like the B-1 and the Persian and the F-15 and didn't support SDI, and then I look at his vacillation on Iraq and his inconsistency, which I think is utterly now incoherent, you know, I see somebody that has earned the label as the most liberal senator on issues of defense and intelligence. Saddam would be in power, basically, he was saying tonight, if he had his way. Would the world be safer?
I don't think what you said is true, by the way. I mean, John, I wrote the Iraq Liberation Act in 1998 to change the overt policy of the United States from containment to replacement. I wrote it. John Kerry supported it in 1990. He referenced it tonight.
He was right then. He was right.
He was, and I then. Well, no, but look, he's not repudiated even his vote. What he's objected to is that the cause of the war has shifted. Look, the president's big problem with Iraq is not that it's unpopular with foreign leaders. I mean, that's going to happen. You know, it's going to be difficult to please foreign leaders in all cases. The problem is it's become unpopular at home. And one of the reasons that I believe that the president's victory in Iraq is only going to be secured if John Kerry is going to win is because he's got the capacity.
You were right. I had you right there. So you got to that point. You were doing good up to that point.
Let me talk to you about the way votes work. Can you explain to our audience, because we keep hearing voted X number of times to raise taxes. They keep it 98 times.
Well, 98.
Voted a number of times to lower taxes.
Look, there is perhaps one of the worst pieces of tax legislation that just came out of conference committee yesterday between the House and the Senate. It starts off as a way to cure a defect in our tax laws to help manufacturers who are going to be disadvantaged by a WTO decision. It got larded up with all sorts of things. $139 billion for the cost. $139 billion of tax increases to offset those. So every single one of those, if the president signs that bill, which he will, he's going to be signing a bill that's going to be increasing taxes.
So what does it mean when
Andy Card.
When they come out, maybe we'll get them in here. When they come out and they say he voted to increase taxes 98 times,
look,
what does that mean?
Look, the issue, no, because look, the president.
Please, let's explain this.
The president's going to sign a bill in short order, a tax bill. It is going to be a bill that's going to cut taxes, but it's also going to be a bill that's going to raise taxes to offset the cuts.
Right.
They call it closing loopholes, but if it's your loophole getting closed, it's a tax.
It's a tax.
No, it feels like a tax.
Let's talk about the issue of intel. Now, in terms of, I keep hearing he also voted $250 billion to raise for the intelligence community. So, I mean, they take these numbers, they extract certain votes and say, look what he voted to reduce. And that's why senators have a hard time running for president, right?
Well, maybe. I mean, I just, the thing I worry about is I don't think the whole discussion like this informs very well. All of us after 9/11 have been changed.
Yeah.
Look, everybody has been changed. President Bush has been changed. I've been changed. Senator Kerry's been changed. We now know that you cannot allow a terrorist to sit in a sanctuary and feel that they're going to be safe. We know we have to go after them. We know we have to kill them. I was pleased to hear Senator Kerry say it again tonight, as he had said in Miami.
But they keep saying global test, and he's not going to have a global test.
The global test referenced Americans. It didn't reference foreigners. He didn't say he was going to get any foreign entity an opportunity to veto. He said quite the contrary. The global test referenced the same sort of thing that President Bush talked about tonight when he's asked about Iran. Needing to get the Germans and the French and the Brits to lead the way. So we're going to have them take care of that one. We want a multilateral discussion, he said, with North Korea. Again, I think it's not the most substantial thing that separates these two individuals. They have a lot more in common on that issue than it appears.
Good to see you, Senator. Thank you for coming by. Appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much. No, I love you. You're great. All right, we got to take a break. And thank you for being with us. You're watching the Network American Trust for real journalism, fair and balanced. Our final thoughts coming up.